thank you for sending me a text, sir, in the middle of a commercial break, so I was well aware of what was out there on ESPN.com in advance of this man's book, American Kings, a biography of the quarterback that's coming out later on this year. Seth Wickersham back here on the Rich Eisen Show. Good to see you, Seth. How are you?
Listen, man, I'm great, but I don't know. It's a big act to follow Jacob in Toledo.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Seth.
Like, we might have to push this like an hour.
It's okay.
I don't know if I can quite top him.
Well, man, what just got put out there in advance of your book and your conversations with the Williams family, Carl and Caleb, how close did it come to Caleb Williams truly trying to force his way not to be drafted by the Chicago Bears, Seth?
I don't think it was that close, but it was one of those things that was definitely pondered. And, it had been out in the ether in the months leading up to the draft. And what I tried to do was just add some clarity and some detail to it where I could. Look, I think that Carl has been very clear publicly about his opinions of the NFL draft process and the fact that the worst team drafts the best player. And he was looking for ways around it because he saw a system where his son was locked into the team that drafted him, like all number one picks are, for basically 8 years. And so he was trying to find a way around it. And he, met with people like Marvin Demoff and Archie Manning and lawyers and people like that, all trying to find loopholes around the draft. And at one point, they even considered joining the United Football League if it would give him a chance to be an unrestricted free agent in 2025. Ultimately, none of those really were things that he wanted to do. At the Combine, Caleb obviously met with the Bears. He also met with Kevin O'Connell of the Vikings, and they hit it off. And I have a lot of stuff in the book from Kevin about how he coaches quarterbacks and how it's rooted in his autobiography. And they just really took to each other. And at one point, Caleb said, I got to go to the Bears. And his dad was like, let's try it. But they both knew that getting traded to a divisional rival was almost a non-starter. Around the time of Caleb's pro day, Ryan Poles, the GM of the Bears, said, we're drafting you no matter what. Remember, they didn't even look at quarterbacks like Jaden Daniels. They were all in on Caleb. And so that left one option, the Jack and John Elway option of basically nuking a city and making a situation untenable. And while I think Carl would have been willing to do it and was willing to take bullets for his son, it wasn't something that Caleb wanted to do. And as he told me when we discussed it, he said, I wasn't ready to nuke Chicago.
And that all makes sense. Everything.
It makes a lot of sense.
From a dad wanting to do well by his son to loving Kevin O'Connell. I mean, anybody who talks football and offense and quarterbacking with him gets it right away. And obviously Caleb got it. And all the way through to having a sense of the setup for him on the coaching side wasn't really to his liking, or there could be something up. So in the limited time I have with you here, Seth, what did happen? Any reporting at all on the Bears' choice to stick with Eberflus, or that's not part of your book at all? Did the Bears did the Williams family have any insight on why Cliff Kingsbury wasn't hired there and they stuck with Eberflus and Waldron was the guy? Anything from that end?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of good coaches could have been hired, and I think that Caleb was wondering out loud whether he could do it with Shane Waldron. And I think that when Shane was brought in, I think that the Williams camp was kind of underwhelmed by that choice. Obviously, it didn't go well. Shane didn't last the year, neither did Eberflus. And look, the Bears haven't had a great history when it comes to quarterbacks. We know that. They haven't drafted a star since Jim McMahon. That was in the 80s. And even recent guys like Justin Fields and Mitch Trubisky hadn't panned out. And so when you look at the organizational stability, the offensive expertise and performance that was under Matt Eberflus, and just some other issues like, the stadium uncertainty, that type of thing, this is what led them to wonder out loud about that. And again, in the months leading up to the draft, Carl Williams told me Chicago is where quarterbacks go to die.
And the thing that I think that is jumping out at everybody right now, Seth Wickersham of ESPN, in advance of his book coming out on American Kings, right? Did I get that right? It's coming out on quarter. There it is, a biography of the quarterback, Seth Wickersham, soon to be where, or I guess you can pre-order it right now, I'd imagine.
You can.
Great. Everyone's kind of jumping at what you learned about what the Bears were doing with Caleb last year. Did he, and did he really say that they didn't give him any sense on how to watch film and he watched it by himself? Seth?
Yeah, it was one of those things that when I discussed it with Caleb, we brought up Alex Smith, because Alex Smith, has talked a lot about that in San Francisco, how he would just watch film by himself and no one had taught him how to watch film, how you start with certain positions and move backwards from there. And there were similarities with Caleb. And at times he would just watch film by himself with little direction. And, I want to make one thing clear is that, like, ultimately all of this stuff was Caleb's decision. And he did visit the Bears after his pro day, and he came back and he told, everybody around him that, like, I can do it in Chicago. I'm going to be a Bear. And I think that, his heart is in it, trying to figure out a way to turn the Bears into a winner. Just some of my reporting touches on some of the concerns that happened ahead of time. But look, as the season went on, I mean, it was a huge validation for the way that Carl Williams saw this process unfolding. Not that I think he's happy about that, but, those were his fears. And he wanted his son to end up at a team that had, the type of quarterback guru that, can be a partnership that lasts the duration of a career. And, already Caleb is going to be on, his third, offensive play caller and second head coach entering his second year.
But I think, the general sense is that he does appear to be in a position of having that attached at the hip career play caller and career maker in Ben Johnson. At least that is the sense that everyone has, certainly in hope in Chicago, that he is going to be that guy. That said, I still can't believe that a kid was let to watch film by himself or not really given too many, parameters on how to be a film watcher or what to look for. That he said he would turn the film on by himself to figure out what to watch, Seth?
Yeah, and again, this has happened before. Quarterbacks do talk about it. It's one of those things about the NFL that we can't really believe that takes place, but it does. And it's one of the reasons why people like Carl Williams were so concerned about where his son ended up and wanted to do everything that they could to try to give him an opportunity to have some agency over where he ended up. Obviously, that didn't end up happening, but that's why. And, people can argue with the tactics or whatever it might be, but it's hard to argue with the logic behind it, especially when you see a season play out like it did last year. I mean, he was sacked 68 times. It's ridiculous.
It is that. Okay, so what do you think the fallout of this part of your book is going to be? The knowing the NFL as well as you do, Players Association, hearing the way that their collective bargaining work has been evaluated by a star player's father, who is clearly a Sherpa for him, who, by the way, couldn't have been more, spot on about his concerns based on everything. What do you think? Or is that one thing? Not much?
I mean, I have no idea. This happens a lot. Like I said, I mean, I write a lot about, quarterback dads in the book, and, they become kind of a punchline similar to like these Marv Marinovich types, but there's a reason behind it. And that's because this is the most valuable position in sports. It's the most mysterious position in sports. And there are no sure things. And it relies on luck a lot more than anybody wants to admit. And I think that, that's part of what we saw play out. Think about, Caleb goes to Chicago, Jaden Daniels goes to Washington. He goes to a terrific offensive play caller in Cliff Kingsbury,
who the Bears had in their facility to potentially hire.
Absolutely. And they have Dan Quinn, who's a veteran head coach, and he knows how to run an operation. And look at how well Jaden did. Look at Bo Nix. I get in the book into some of the scouting behind Bo Nix, some really fascinating things as to how the Broncos landed on him. Look at how well he did with someone who knows how to talk quarterback and speak quarterback and call an offense. And it's not really unreasonable, but that's what they wanted.
Seth, thanks for the time, man. Short notice, and I appreciate the text and the one you also sent me earlier this week. Greatly appreciate it. You're the man. Look for more of my calls.
Looking forward to it, man. Thank you.
You got it. That's Seth Wickersham, ESPN senior writer, and of course, you can pre-order his book, American Kings, about quarterbacks right now. That's Seth Wickersham here. Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.